Welcome to Clinton, Tennessee, a small town with a unique history. Today we're going to look at the history and story of how Clinton was turned into an antiques town. But before we go into Clinton being an antiques town, let's get a quick sense of Clinton's history. And to do that, we're going to talk to Mary Harris, an Anderson County historian.
Well, as Clinton, of course, was named Burrsville after Aaron Burr. And after his disgrace to the city, they got kind of embarrassed when Aaron Burr, who Clinton was named after, had a duel. And that kind of looked bad for the town of Clinton. It was renamed Clinton after Senator Clinton. And of course, Anderson County was named after Joseph Anderson, who was a senator. And here's one for you. Joseph Anderson married an outlaw. Now you think an outlaw. I told his commissioner that one time and he said, "You mean he married an outlaw?" Yes, Only Patient Outlaw. That was her name. They were the families that came in here and settled up in towards Norris area, Andersonville. So it's nice to know that we had outlaws here.
Now that we got a little history lesson about Clinton, let's find out how Clinton became an antiques town. And to do that, we're going to talk to Jerry Ellenberg and Judy Ray, both antique store owners.
My name is Jerry Ellenberg. My business partner, Marcia Pemberton, and I started this business in 2001. We are located at 320 North Main Street in Clinton, Tennessee.
This is Clinton Antique Mall. I'm the owner of Clinton Antique Mall. This is 3 floors. We've been here since 1979. And where we started at was a small building on Cullum Street. There were 5 of us that all worked in different shops, and we wanted a shop that we could just work one day a week and go out and buy stuff during the rest of the time. And so that's what we did. We formed it with 5 people to just start out as a small business that grew tremendously so that we could each one work a day and go out and shop for antiques.
Some of the history of this building is that it was built between 1890 and 1892. It was originally a general merchandise and dry goods store for several years. In the 40s, it housed the Clinton Courier newspaper, which is our local newspaper. Then later on in the 50s and 60s, it became Taylor & Sons Auto Parts. But during its 120-year history, it's housed several different stores or businesses during that time. I actually rent the building. I started renting the building in 2001 because I was looking for a storefront to house an antique store here in Clinton.
This was originally Clinton Hardware. It's been here for many years. We've had a couple owners. We took the building over in the late 80s, and it had not been occupied by a hardware store or antique store or anything for probably about 4 or 5 years. It had really gone down. And we took it over, and in 4 months brought it into what it is now, which is a beautiful antique shop.
The kind of antiques that interest me probably the most are what we call primitive or country items or country collectibles, something that ties into the East Tennessee history. What people used to use years ago before it was a modern era. Things like cupboards, crocks, churns, dough bowls, rolling pins, oil lamps, anything connected with Appalachian East Tennessee.
We would love to always have East Tennessee pieces because that's part of our heritage in Tennessee, or just Tennessee pieces in general. But our customers demand whatever they are buying is what we go out and get. We do have French pieces, we have European pieces, we have pieces from everywhere. Anything that anybody wants, we try to get. But our love is still the East Tennessee primitives.
With all the antiques in their stores, where do they find their customers?
We get customers from a lot of different states in the eastern part of the United States. We advertise to bring in travelers off of Interstate 75, which is located just 5 miles from where we're at. And we also have a website that people can view that will bring people to Clinton, Tennessee. We get people from Canada, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, Texas, Wisconsin, Idaho, Arkansas. So we get a large venue of people from a lot of different states around the eastern part of the United States. Plus we get a lot of people locally here from different counties in East Tennessee.
What do people have to say when they sell their antiques to antique stores?
There are times when we buy certain items from family members that we do get a story behind some of the items that we do purchase. Some of the things that we get some real interesting stories on, or I get interesting stories on, is war memorabilia, WW1 or WW2 war memorabilia. A lot of these things were owned by these people's grandparents or their parents that have been passed down through the years to them. And you hear stories about how they left to go to the service, how they left to go to war, and what happened to them while they were in war, and what their part of the war was.
This is one of our unique finds where people just pull up to the back door and open up their trunk and say, you know, I'm leaving, I've got a bunch of stuff for sale, would you be interested? And of course, it's anything to do with our history, we want it. This is a great little item that you've probably seen yourself. It's an old Jack in the Box. See, it still works. And people have great memories of these things like this, and they would love to own them, again, just for their childhood memories.
Let's get into the business side of antiques. How do they go about pricing them?
To determine the value of any one item is basically comes from knowledge of being in the antique business for a while or several years. To know the market, to know what you need to pay for items, to know what you need to sell them for or try to sell them for. Now there are certified appraisers in the area that can give you certified prices. A lot of those are needed for insurance purposes, or someone that just has an heirloom from their family that is interested in what it is actually worth. And a certified appraiser will go by a book value. And there's book values basically on anything that is collectible.
Price-wise, we just try to, the economy's bad now, so we try to just stay within people's ranges. But we carry a variety, some high-priced things and some medium, and you know, some things that young couples can buy to start their antique business, you know, antiques in their house with.
To know if an antique is expensive or not has a lot to do with the availability of a certain item, how much it was produced or reproduced through the years. One thing, for example, is treadle sewing machines. Back in the early 1900s, every household had a treadle sewing machine. Every woman did their own sewing. So you're going to find a lot of treadle sewing machines by a lot of different makers. The same thing applies a lot to a lot of crockery, as far as crock bowls, crock jugs, churns. All of those were utilitarian items that every family had to have that they used from day to day. A lot of those survived, so only the specialty ones are most expensive. What really determines the value of an antique, which a lot of times an antique, to make it an antique, needs to be 90 to 100 years old actually, but is the availability and the condition of what a certain item is.
Clinton also hosts the biannual Clinch River Antiques Festival. Let's find out about that.
The Clinch River Antique Festival is a gathering of antique vendors from Tennessee and surrounding states that come to Clinton twice a year to present and sell their antiques at an antique show that's held outdoors. The first one was in 2001, which commemorated the 200-year anniversary of Clinton. It was a joint venture between the antique merchants, the City of Clinton, and the Anderson County Chamber of Commerce to present this festival to the public.
We were trying to make space for more dealers, and there wasn't enough room for them. So they opened little shops on the main part of the town in Clinton. And as it grew and grew, they wanted ways to really bring a big crowd to Clinton and to enjoy our small town. So we started the festival. And it's became bigger and bigger and bigger. We have a spring and a fall festival, and it really helps the shops. We're open till Friday night, the night before the big festival on Saturday. And the shops are always full that night because everybody's so excited about what's coming on the streets.
We get a lot of really good response from the festivals, from the people that attend the festivals, and also from the antique vendors that come to present and sell their wares here at the show. People really enjoy the fact that they can come to an outdoor venue and there be so many antique vendors to present their wares. It's just a good day to be outdoors, to do some antique shopping, and people really enjoy that in the company of other people being at the festival. The antique vendors, they always enjoy it because we have good crowds and they have good sales. And this festival has got to be known as a really good antique festival in the East Tennessee area.
We've had the customers that start out at first are still coming in as it grows bigger and bigger, and they always find really unique treasures and things that, they don't have to travel out of town. They just come here. But we do have people from Ohio, everywhere, that come just this festival because there's lots of things to find, things that you can redo, things that, is something maybe that you're looking for. That's a special thing that you couldn't find anyplace else.
The festival even has a horse-drawn buggy. Let's take a ride.
My brother was telling me about an ice house. I don't remember it.
Oh, I remember the ice house.
Yeah,
I remember.
Okay. And then Dr. Hall, how many of you had Dr. Hall as your doctor?
No, I know it was Dr. Hall, but we had Dr.
I knew who that was.
Yeah, almost everybody that rides here that's from Clinton was delivered by Dr. Hall.
Oh, no.
See, and it wouldn't be the festival without your wagon, so thank you for bringing it.
But it's a great festival, and it has grown so big, and that shows you that people really, really wanted something like that.
The Clinton Antique Festival that for Clinton has opened the doors for many, many people to come back home to share their antiques with other people. Antiques, a lot of people call it stuff. We have a lot of stuff, but when we start separating it and looking at it, we have antiques, have our families. And as far as the festival, that's what it's all about.
With Clinton antique shops keeping up with their past items, how do they keep up with their 21st century customers?
We use a lot of modern technology to advertise our businesses. We use billboards on the interstate to bring people to downtown Clinton. We use media publications to reach people in multiple states rather than just locally. And we also use the internet from websites for information and directions to bring them to downtown Clinton, Tennessee.
We try to stay away from the internet. We do have a Facebook just to kind of keep up with everything so people can write us notes and things, but we rather deal with the people personally ourselves. It's just, I write all the tickets by hand. I don't put them in, any kind of computer or anything, so that I know, we get that feel that's small town. We don't want to take that ever away from our shop because that's really what makes us what we are. And antiques really are unique memories. So if you're just talking over an internet or something, you're really not getting the feel of the shop or the person. And we just want to be small town as long as we can.
Currently, people are still looking for the older type antiques rather than the mid-century modern antiques. The business has changed from the 90s until now, where people have refined their taste as far as they're looking for certain and particular items, something to complete a collection or something to add to a collection. People are looking at items for their homes that can be used, that are very functional in their house rather than just having something old. They're buying things that they can actually use in their homes.
We started out in Clinton, a shop by ourselves, with people thinking that we couldn't make it, and we grew and grew to a really big shop. And sometimes the smaller shops don't feel like they can make it very long, and we do see them go in and out in 6 months. But if you really love this business, there's room for growth in it, and it's going to be always here because it's part of our history. And people now, I think, are more into our history than ever. They're kind of getting away from the throwaway stuff, like the Chinese stuff. They don't want to collect that because it doesn't last very long. So it's getting back to the things that from our country that were handmade by our ancestries. And it's just, I think that's why it'll always be bigger and bigger and bigger, as long as we can keep finding the pieces. But we're very lucky in East Tennessee to be able to find a lot of great pieces.
I think Clinton will continue to be an antique mecca for several years. It's taken it over 10 years now to become the antique mecca that it is and have the many antique stores that it has. I think that people will always, no matter what point in time we're at, will be collecting or will enjoy things from the past. So I think Clinton will, with its culture the way it is, the old buildings, the history that it has, will be an antique mecca for several years.
I don't think that Clinton would be as great as it is without the antique business. It's just part of the history of this town. We have the Tennessee pearls that are harvested in the river right in our back door. They cannot be harvested anymore because in the 80s they made sure people were gathering them, so they're just about extinct. And so you cannot gather them anymore, but that's part of our history. Antiques are part of the history of this town, but it makes it really unique because it's so different. It's not just a little town with some little bitty shops in it. It's real great antiques.
The way I see and the way that Clinton will advance in the next 20 years is growing. Our industries, our parks, where so many businesses have come in, and that's going to help Anderson and Clinton as far as being able to expand families that can stay here and not have to move off, like World War II, when people lived and they couldn't make a living. Most of them went north. But with the industries that we have here in Clinton, out in the industrial parkways, people can make a living and stay at home. And our commissioners, our city government, they see and make plans to bring industries in so the people can have jobs to survive, send their children to school, get an education. And friends, that's the main thing. Friends all over the county. And I expect Anderson County to survive.
An Anderson County historian.
Well, as Clinton, of course, was named Burrsville after Aaron Burr, and after his disgrace to the city, they got kind of embarrassed when Aaron Burr, who Clinton was named after, had a duel, and that kind of looked bad for the town of Clinton. It was renamed Clinton after Senator Clinton. And of course, Anderson County was named after. It's nice to know that we had outlaws here.
Now that we got a little history lesson about Clinton, let's find out how Clinton became an antiques town. And to do that, we're going to talk to Jerry Ellenberg and Judy Ray, both antique store owners.
My name is Jerry Ellenberg. My business partner, Marcia Pemberton, and I started this business in 2001. We are located at 320 North Main Street in Clinton, Tennessee.
This is Clinton.
Joseph Anderson, who was a senator. And here's one for you. Joseph Anderson married an outlaw. Now you think an outlaw. I told his commissioner that one time and he said, "You mean he married an outlaw?" Yes, Only Patient Outlaw. That was her name. They were the families that came in here and settled up in towards Norris area, Andersonville. So it
Welcome to Clinton, Tennessee, a small town with a unique history. Today we're going to look at the history and story of how Clinton was turned into an antiques town. But before we go into Clinton being an antiques town, let's get a quick sense of Clinton's history. And to do that, we're going to talk to Mary Harris.
Clinton Antique Mall, I'm the owner of Clinton Antique Mall. This is 3 floors. We've been here since 1979. And where we started at was a small building on Cullum Street. There were 5 of us that all worked in different shops, and we wanted a shop that we could just work one day a week and go out and buy stuff during the rest of the time. And so that's what we did. We formed it with 5 people to just start out as a small business that grew tremendously so that we could each one work a day and go out and shop for antiques.
Some of the history